Good evening, Facebook, and good evening, YouTube family. We are honored to be here tonight with you, celebrating another week of Tuesday, April the 18th. And we did a show on Sunday, and we had a lot of we had problems with the hearing, the audio portion of it. So Brian and I wanted to bring this show again tonight because a lot of people have contacted us and showed interest that they really needed to hear that again. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring it to you tonight. Basically, we're talking about BRICS. I've had several people ask me, what is BRICS? I've never heard of BRICS. So I'm going to let Brian break all that down to you tonight, but I do want you to be aware that BRICS stands for Britain.
Brazil,
I'm sorry. I said Britain all the time. Brazil, Russia, India, China, Russia, and South Africa. And they have formulated together with their own currency. They're going to exchange resources together, which is going to possibly devalue greatly the American dollar as we know it. You can look at any BBC News or any other news besides CNN, MSNBC. Fox does talk about it some, but everybody is aware. Corporate America is aware that this is happening. To what level, a degree it will take place, we don't know. No one knows that. But what I can say is that there is a lot of talk going on and transactions are being held. Am I right on that, Brian?
Yes. Give us a thumbs up
if the
audio is clear. Those of you all that are watching, please just give us a thumbs up, or hey, say, Brian, Janice, everything is good as far as the audio. We can hear you all well. So again, hello Facebook family, hello YouTube family. Again, we do apologize for the minor hiccup that we had on this past Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to kind of jump right on in. I want to give you all this information, kind of let you know what's going on in the world of finance as it relates to the economy, nationally and internationally. That's what Janice is speaking in reference to. And then we also want to deal with the widening gap between Black and not only white America, but all other ethnicities that are migrating into the United States concerning the financial gap that's taking place.
Yes.
We are seeing Black people are losing when it comes to the financial gain. We are in rapid decline like we've never been before.
Yes.
Baba Dick Gregory would say that when America gets a recession, Black folk have a depression. So, and that is absolutely awesome. Thank you. That is so true. The whole declaration of what we're dealing with as it relates to the economy, it hasn't just started. This has been
going on. And it works for years.
Yes, it's been a rolling effect, so to speak. This is now things are coming to the forefront. They're surfacing, so to speak. And now we're seeing the residual effects of what actually has been taking place for years. The Ukraine war that we are
currently
so foolishly undergirding financially in this country is expediting the speed of what we're seeing as it relates to our economy on a decline. So let's kind of jump right in. And I'm mentioning the Ukraine war for a reason. Why am I mentioning that? Because you're going to see as we get deeper into the show and I begin to break down BRICS, the Ukraine war, Ukraine and Russia war, actually also sped up the process as it relates to those countries that are allying with Russia. It sped up the process concerning all of those sanctions that the United States put in place,
Yes.
being rebutted by countries that were allied with Russia that says, no, we're not going to sanction Russia. We are going to continue to trade with them. They will continue to trade with us. And to make certain that we're not affected, we do not have to take the American dollar as the world currency, which is literally the world reserve. So we do not have to actually be partakers of that.
Yes.
Okay. So that within itself, brothers and sisters, it has really, like I said, the progression and the speed by which our economy is declining. It's due to, also, it's not the main reason, but it's part of the reason that we're seeing it move at such a rapid rate.
Yes.
Okay. So let's define BRICS. Like Janice was saying, BRICS is an alliance of nations that have formed to basically, brothers and sisters, and BRICS stands for Brazil, okay, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So let me just kind of give you a real brief summary on BRICS. The first formation of BRICS happened in 2001. BRIC was originally coined, not BRICS, it was originally BRIC in 2001. That was Brazil, Russia, China, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. It was coined by the chief economist, Jim O'Neill, for the multinational investment bank, Goldman Sachs. Jim O'Neill was the first one to actually coin that phrase relating to the economic growth that those nations were having. They were experiencing an economic boom within those particular four nations. Jim O'Neill, the chief economist, like I said, for Goldman Sachs at that time, he coined the alliance between those nations, and he called them BRIC. Another reason that he called them BRIC was because the financial wealth that they were actually generating and that they were putting into the world banking system at that time were superseding all other nations, okay? So their GDP, gross domestic profit, was growing exponentially fast, and it was growing faster than the US and its European allies. Okay.
Yes.
So here's the start of BRIC. So BRIC is not a new thing. And brothers and sisters, anytime you see something when it starts to surface, okay, always know that that thing has been
around
in position for years.
Yes.
It has been being worked on for years. And no different from what we are hearing now all over the news networks about this new alliance called BRICS that is yielding so much economic power. Okay, they have been around since 2001. The chief economist, like I said, Jim O'Neill for Goldman Sachs, at the time, he actually put out a warning that these countries at some particular point were going to not only surpass the United States as it relates to a economic power, but they would be the oncoming superpowers.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, pushing the United States down to a position, subpar position, if you will, of being a second to third tier type nation. Okay, so we see that happens in 2001. 2009, the four nations met for their first summit in Russia at Yekaterinburg. So they meet in 2009, first summit, to actually hash out, to brainstorm about not only their alliance and undergirding their alliance financially, but they also met in 2009 at this summit. They discussed replacing the dollar as the world reserve.
The American dollar.
Okay, that's right. The American, we know that the dollar is that refers to American money. Now, let me just kind of go back and give you just a brief history on the power of the American dollar. In 1971, Nixon removes the gold standard from the dollar. The reason that Nixon removed the gold standard from the dollar in 1971 was because so many nations that had a large amount of American currency were coming and saying, we want to exchange our monies for gold. Okay, so for every $35, that was worth an ounce of gold in the United States. Okay, now Nixon, to protect Fort Knox and basically the New York Stock Exchange, Nixon removes the gold parity from being the standard of the dollar. Okay, 1974, Kissinger goes to the Saudi Arabia kingdom and says to the Saudi kingdom that they will enter into an agreement with them as far as trading and export, as long as they allow the dollar to be the currency that undergirded the oil. Okay. Thus, you have the forming and the power of what we know as OPEC, which are the 13 oil trading nations, the 13 oil producing nations. Okay. So in 1974, Kissinger goes, he brokers a deal with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia agrees to that deal. And out of that comes the dollar being now the world currency or the world reserve. And it is backed, instead of being backed by gold, is literally backed by oil. Okay. Yes. So it is known as the petrodollar to the oil trading nations, or OPEC. In OPEC, that's what they called it, the actual petrodollar. Okay, so now the petrodollar is being threatened.
Yes.
By BRICS. BRICS is saying we no longer need the dollar. We are not going to use your currency anymore, and we're not going to trade oil based on the dollar being the currency.
Okay, Brian. Okay. Let Brian say that again, because people really need to understand this. I don't think we're really getting it. If we
can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Hello, Janice.
Hello, Mr. King.
I get to Mr. King.
Are you?
I don't get Larry. Hello, Janice. Oh, hi. So why are you inviting me on this? What's going on?
No. We want you to listen. We don't, just.
All right, let's go.
We're actually doing the show.
We're live. So you're on live in front of everybody. I don't know if you want to be on live, but I don't think so.
Hey, being on the internet, being live doesn't embarrass me none. What's up?
Okay.
Yeah, so there you go.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so everybody, let's get back to it. Like I was saying, and losing my train of thought here. Okay, as I was saying, is, with BRICS forming their alliance, it could undervalue the actual dollar. So let's go a little bit more into detail about that. So I'm just giving you the rundown. 2009, they have their first summit. 2010, South Africa was invited to join the group, therefore forming the name BRICS. Okay, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now South Africa joins in 2010. Okay, 2014, these nations undergird themselves financially by investing $50 billion worth of seed money to start a bank called the New Development Bank. Okay, and they do that as almost like a slap in the face to the World Bank and to the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund. They start the New Development Bank. They undergird it. 2014, $50 billion worth of seed money they put in place. The bank is placed in Shanghai. What is the significance of the bank being placed in Shanghai? The significance of the bank being placed in Shanghai is where China's gold reserve is kept.
That's it.
Okay,
yes.
So it is their monetary exchange. It's like our stock market, New York Stock Exchange. The same is representative or would be synonymous as it relates to Shanghai and their equivalency to what our New York Stock Exchange is and our Fort Knox is, so to speak. So that is where the gold stock exchange is. That is why the bank is actually placed in Shanghai. Okay? That happens in 2014, brothers and sisters. So this thing is rolling now. It's got some steam. It is moving.
Yes.
It's not going to slow down. They are on track. At their first summit that I was sharing with you all, at that first summit, they talked about replacing the dollar with a new currency that they could trade in, and export in as it relates to oil. So they talked about getting rid of the petrodollar and putting something in place that was just as powerful currency in place that could actually become the new world reserve currency. Okay. So, all right, let me just kind of fast forward. So that happens in 2014. In 2014, the bank starts to solicit for members. You can actually join the New Development Bank right now.
If you get the money to.
If you got the money, you can start off with $100. It's not something where you have to make a big investment, because remember, this started in 2014. We're in 2023. Okay, so there are a lot of international corporations actually investing
in this bank, yes,
and putting their funding in this bank. Okay, they see the handwriting on the wall. Okay, so what does the bank do that was significant? In 2015, the bank develops a program called the Contingent Reserve Arrangement. It allows members who are struggling with payments that have also added monies to the bank, not as much as those founders with the $50 billion, but have also purchased a significant amount of stock, things like that, shares, whatever the case may be. They put the contingent arrangement reserve plan in place to allow them to make payments. Okay, so listen, brothers and sisters, let me say this to you. What they did basically is put a layaway plan in place. Okay, we understand layaway. If you all remember how the old system of layaway used to be, you could go and buy something. You didn't own it. You were allowed to make payments on it. And then once the payments were made in full,
it became
then
yours.
you owned it. Okay? So the same way this bank has put something similar in place to that.
Somebody's asking a question, Brian.
That allows you to be able to make investments, especially for large investments. Okay. All right. So I can't see the question. Let's see here.
Let's see. That's Larry.
Okay.
The dollar has been.
Okay. Apparently.
All right.
Yeah. It's true.
So the devaluing of the dollar started in 2001. It is continuing to roll. Okay. All right, brothers and sisters. So BRICS Bank is open for new members. Not that I'm advertising for them, but I'm just telling you the truth.
It is open.
2021, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Uruguay, and Bangladesh all took up shares in the new development bank. Okay. We know that the United Arab Emirates is one of the wealthiest
countries,
nations,
yes,
that's on the planet today. Okay. Fast forward 2 years later, that happened in 2021, 2023. Saudi Arabia now has joined the BRICS nations, and they're saying that we will trade our oil to you for the yuan dollar, which is the currency of, at this particular time, of China. So the yuan, digital money, and the yuan currency, Saudi is saying we will allow that currency to actually supersede the petrodollar, which is the US currency, and we will trade you our oil in yuans.
Okay.
Okay. Now, why does Saudi Arabia enter into a pact with these nations? One reason that they do it for the same reason they did it in 1974.
Okay.
Okay. In 1974, when Kissinger goes over there and he negotiates this deal with Saudi Arabia to trade oil in dollars. Okay. The main objective was, if you do this, you have us as an alliance to protect you from any outside nations coming in and just taking your oil. Okay. So Saudi Arabia in 2023 enters into a contract with BRICS for the BRICS, and the backing of that is this. The underlying reason that they do it is this, is because the BRICS nations are able to protect Saudi Arabia now from the West. If the United States decide to invade and say, no, you entered this deal with us as it relates to the petrodollar, we're not going to allow you to trade in the yuan oil reserve. We're not going to allow that. You cannot just cut us off. Now Saudi has two of the most powerful nations in the world backing them that says, no, you're not going to come in here from the West, United States. You're not going to come in here, and you're not going to impose sanctions, nor will you come in and start a war with Saudi Arabia. We got their back.
Okay.
So the Saudis enter into the agreement based on seeing security. This is a secure deal. Their strength is more powerful now than the G7 nations, and we want a piece of the pie.
Come on.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is very, it gets very interesting, brothers and sisters, and I'm gonna just give you some, just read you some facts here as it relates to BRICS and you know what is actually going on right now. Okay, so and I took this this information basically from World News, BBC News, as well. But this is what it says. It says that BRICS have surpassed the group of seven known as the G7 in terms of gross domestic products based on purchasing power parity, according to data published by the UK-based economic research firm Acorn Macro Counseling. Who are the G7 nations? The G7 nations comprise of the United States, Canada, the UK, France, Italy, Germany, and Japan. Okay, those are your G7 nations. All right, this report goes on to say that BRICS group makes up 41% of the global population and accounts for 16% of world trade. The 5 BRICS nations now contribute 31.5% of the global GDP compared to the G7 countries, which only contributes now 30.7%. Okay, so the 5 BRICS nations GDP, like I said earlier, has surpassed the G7. Now, when Kissinger makes the deal in 1974 with Saudi Arabia, the allies that backed Saudi Arabia at that time were the G7 nations.
That's right.
Okay,
yes.
You understand?
Yeah, I got
so,
it. Yeah.
All right, so this report goes on to talk about the president of Brazil. He meets at the New Development Bank in Shanghai, and he gives basically just a summary report of why he feels that the BRICS nations should continue on their journey of the devaluing and the de-dollarization of their particular countries, okay? And not only their countries, but those that are now forming an alliance with BRICS, okay? So he says, why can't an institution like the BRICS Bank have a currency to finance trade relations between Brazil and China, between Brazil and all other BRIC countries? Lula, which is the Brazil president, said, who decided the dollar was the trade currency after the end of gold parity? Okay. He goes on, he says, we need a currency that gives countries more calm, because today a country needs to be run after the dollar to be able to export when it could export in its own currency, he said. On Thursday in Shanghai, Lula visited the research center of the Huawei Technologies Company and met with chief executives of China Communications Construction Company and automaker BYD Company, which plans a major investment in electric cars in Brazil. Now, listen to what he says. He goes on to say, or he goes on and makes a statement, China has surpassed the United States as Brazil's top trading partner in 2009 and is a major market for Brazilian soybeans, iron ore, and oil. Okay. Brazil is now the largest recipient of Chinese investments in Latin America, driven by spending on high-tension electricity, transmission lines, and oil production. Brazil's finance minister, Fernando Haddad, said, who also went on the trip, local currencies are already used in bilateral trade. He quotes that from the Bloomberg report. He says the advantage is to avoid the straitjacket imposed by necessarily having trade operations settled in a currency of a country not involved in the transaction, he told reporters in Shanghai. Okay. In the interview with an investor, Peter Schiff, who runs the metals website, schiffgold.com, Schiff says, there are all sorts of reasons why the world should want to divest of dollars and no longer depend on the US dollar as a reserve currency, but we gave them another one. The Biden administration is slapping those economic sanctions on Russia, really highlighted how dangerous it is to allow the United States to enjoy this privilege. And so we have scared the world into divesting of dollars, something they should have done anyway because it was in their economic interest to do so, Peter Schiff said. Schiff emphasized that the dollar's role as the world's currency is a privilege that the United States enjoys at the expense of the rest of the world. Now, he ends by saying other economies would much prefer that their own currencies, monetary policies, and trade patterns not be influenced by those of the U.S., end quote. So that is just a brief, like I said, synopsis. We could go into much greater detail, but that is just a brief synopsis. So now let me share this with you and just kind of help you to understand what's going on at home in the United States. So when we talk about inflation, why is inflation happening? You will always see inflation when there is a war.
Yes.
Okay, the United States is undergirding the Ukraine-Russia war financially, okay? Even so to the point to where not only have we gone to the feds for a loan to transfer money to Ukraine, but in the process of that, because we are $13+ trillion in debt, and that has added to the debt, there had to be some type of subsidization plan in place. Whenever you see that, there's only 1 to 2 ways to actually subsidize those borrowed funds when you're already in debt. Okay, so any economist, any finance person understands what I'm saying. What are the 2 ways that you subsidize that? The American people have to fund the war.
That's right.
Okay, you do that by raising interest rates, and you do that by inflation.
Raising costs.
What is inflation? Inflation, and let me give it to you in elementary terms, okay? 2 years ago, eggs cost you $2.39 a dozen. Today, eggs are $5.39 a dozen, okay? The inflation is the amount between the $2.39 and the $5.39, which is $3. So the product is the same, but because the dollar has been devalued, okay, the monetary amount has been inflated. Okay, so now instead of that same carton being worth $2.39, costing $2.39, it now costs $5.39 because the dollar is devalued and it inflates itself. Okay, to make up for the difference. Okay, so that is how this debt in this war is being subsidized. Okay, I want everybody to understand. That's giving it to you in simple terms as it relates to understanding what we're dealing with at home. Now, every debt has a ceiling.
Yes.
We can only, the United States can only raise the debt ceiling to a certain level before it maxes itself out. And same with interest rates, same with inflation. But here is the unique thing now. With the dollar being devalued at such a rapid rate, with BRICS putting the yuan currency in place for other nations to trade and without having to depend on the dollar as the world reserve anymore.
Okay. Yes.
Now, not only does the dollar not have a value, but the dollar that everybody else tends, as far as internationally, tends to borrow, now just becomes paper for the fire, so to speak. Okay, because nothing is backing the dollar. What backed the dollar, apart from oil, was the power of the United States. Now that you have nations, 5 nations that are saying we are just as powerful militarily, and you're not going to disrupt what we're doing as it relates to creating a new world reserve currency, and you're not going to disrupt our banking system that we are putting in place to not only finance that, but to undergird that and to ease some of the economic stress with other nations.
Yes.
We don't want this. This money is no good. It's worthless to us at this point. Okay, right. So we see a lot of dynamics, brothers and sisters, taking place, like I said, just from a standpoint of, from an economic standpoint, okay? So now, any economist now is going to tell you that we are in trouble as it relates to what your dollar is worth. Your dollar isn't worth anything right now, okay? So when you're checking your 401ks, things of that nature, you're going to see fluctuations because the market is so volatile.
It's volatile,
right now,
very
okay?
volatile. Yeah.
But I'm gonna talk about that in a few minutes, okay? But let's talk about the widening wealth gap between Black America and white America, as well as all other
Nationalities.
immigrants, yes, and nationalities that are in the United States. Okay?
So Brian, I want to ask a question before you delve into that. What about those from India and South Africa and Russia, okay, and Brazil that are coming over into our country that are residing here? Well, what monies are they going to use? Are they going to be, they'll use the American dollars, right?
They are using the American dollars. But like I said, now the yuan, okay, so you have the American dollar, you have the yuan, you have the ruble, which is your Russian dollar. Okay, you have your renminbi, which is your Brazilian. Okay, but the yuan is the currency that is undergirding, which is your China monies, which is undergirding the BRICS alliance. Okay, so all currencies, all trade, pretty much. Russia is trading with China in the yuan
instead of the American dollar.
That's right, in the yuan petro instead of the petro dollar, or the petro yuan instead of the petro dollar.
Yes.
Okay, so that is why, brothers and sisters, the sanctions on Russia have not worked, because these groups of nations are saying that we will not sanction them, we will trade with them. If they need oil, we will sell them the oil, and we will accept the ruble, or we will accept the petro yuan over the petrodollar. Okay, so the sanctions have not affected Russia at all. Matter of fact, look this up, brothers and sisters. Russia has grown economically since the sanctions and the start of the war. So we have to, and now the United States government is going back to the table. See, the finance department arm of the government has to go back, and they have to revisit that. So, and I think our chief financial officer for the United Department of Finance was actually over in the Middle East just 2 weeks ago. Okay, when these nations originally formed in 2001, when we saw the formation of these economies growing so fast and these nations really taking off economically, 2009, they actually offered the United States to be a part
of it.
So they did not leave just in the original plans. They did not fully isolate the United States out of the plans. Okay, so we need to understand that, because at that time, still the dollar carried a lot of weight. Okay, the value was not back then what it is now. Okay, so like I said, the war in Ukraine that was undergirded. So you have to go back 2014. Okay, when the United States put a pseudo government in place in Ukraine. Okay, that's when this upheaval really started between Russia, the United States, and Ukraine. Okay, so we have to talk about that at another time, but it was a sort of like a financial coup that the United States set in place. So this is why you said it earlier, we have to look at more news sources than CNN.
We do.
Okay?
Yes.
We really do, brothers and sisters. And I've said to you all that I want to really break down the Ukraine crisis and show you all that this thing was not only a perpetration of the United States, it was a plan.
Yes.
Of the United States. And not saying anything as it relates to the support of Russia. I don't care either way. I'm unbiased when it comes to that. But I want you to understand the facts behind what we are in and why we are dealing with what we're dealing with today. And then when news outlets give you propaganda campaigns, they're only going to share with you, okay, what favors
them,
the American
people,
what they want to convince you of as it relates to a particular nation, country, you know, here and there. They want to put things in place that actually paints and portrays that nation or that people group no different from what they did us as Black people.
Exactly, okay? And I was going there.
They want to paint and portray those nations or people group a certain way.
Yes.
So that we buy into the whatever they choose as it relates to an out in reference to having to deal with that particular nation or that particular group of people. But when you do the research and go to more sources than just the propaganda networks, you really are able then to find out what is really going on. Okay, like Janet said, now you're seeing American news sources talk about BRICS. Why? Because they got to have an out when the dollar has no value anymore. And when we may have to look at another form of currency apart from the dollar, okay? So the United States trade in dollars, right?
Right.
When that dollar is of no value and China say, we will no longer take your dollar for our products. China is the biggest exporter and the biggest manufacturer as far as distributing goods in the world. It is the biggest exporter in the world.
Yes.
Everything in Walmart is made by China. Okay? So when China says we no longer accept your dollar because your dollar has no value as it relates to the yuan, now the United States have to create another way of being able to trade with these countries. Let me tell you this. The first month of Biden's administration, nobody said nothing about this. The first month, he signed an executive order. Brothers and sisters, go back and look this up. He signed an executive order as it relates to forming a CBD, which is a centralized digital bank. Okay, the centralized digital, or the CDB, the centralized digital bank, Biden signs an executive order for oversight for a centralized digital banking system. Now, What was the reason behind that? The reason behind that was because of the digital yuan that has already been in place, already being traded in the market, and made over $20 billion last year. So now Biden understood we got to do something in the United States to offset. This thing is rolling, it's growing fast.
Yes.
I cannot stop it. We do not have the infrastructure in place to support a digital platform like they have, like China has right now. If we create a centralized digital bank, there has to be oversight. So he signs the executive order for the oversight of forming a centralized digital banking system. Okay, so brothers and sisters, I'm just sharing this. I'm throwing stuff on the wall so you can go down a rabbit hole. Okay.
But you bring it back.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff I've been studying for years. This is not for me. And I've been saying this to some of my friends that are also investors like myself. Hey, we need to be looking at alternatives. First, you need to be looking at, if you are an investor, you need to be looking at gold again.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Because now with all of the centralized international banks saying we want our gold back, and to give us our gold back, we want to buy it back. We want that said one thing as it relates to the dollar, that the dollar was on the decline, and that throughout all history, World War I, World War II, before then, you can go back to the Civil War. You can go back before the Civil War. You understand what I'm saying? Gold has always been the commodity that undergirded a financial system in all nations, not just the United States.
All nations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is why when you look at the colonization of South Africa, the colonization of Africa, period, Ghana, where some of those mines exist on the West Coast, what they used to call the Gold Coast. Okay, that was the reason that a lot of that took place. We know that the enslavement of our ancestors was based on commodities. Okay, robbing the land of precious commodities. So gold has always been valued on the European market.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on, brother.
Always been valued on the European market. Okay. The Asian market as well has always understood that resources is that precious commodities is your main source of value, period. So gold, silver, platinum, all of those type of resources, you're going to see the value increase now. As the dollar is devalued, you're going to see commodities go back up. So I encourage you to look into those things as far as investments. Okay, but now let's deal with the widening wealth gap.
Yes,
okay,
I'm ready
and then we'll be
on.
done in about 15-20 minutes. Okay. Let me give you some stats first, which I like to do. This is from the Pew Research Center. And in 2020, the Pew Research survey, as it relates to blacks and whites, okay, concerning the wealth gap, it said that before, well, let's go back. It says before COVID-19 pandemic, Black people had lower levels of wealth compared to whites. We already know that. The median white household held $188,200 in wealth, which includes savings, retirement accounts, and real estate. So in those three categories, they equaled for the median family wealth. Household wealth, that equaled roughly about $188,200. Blacks, compared to that, had at just $24,100 per household, according to the Pew Research Center and the Hamilton Project. Let me say that again. Before COVID-19, the median household wealth for whites was $188,200, which included a savings account, a retirement account, real estate, okay? It included those three financial vehicles, if you will, okay? Blacks, in comparison to whites before the pandemic, only had $24,100 total for those three categories: in retirement, in their savings, and in real estate, only held as far as wealth $24,100, brothers and sisters.
That is
now, it's not, well, let me say this, and I agree with you, that is sad. But when you look at why Blacks typically live paycheck to paycheck, okay? Blacks do not understand financial literacy on the level that whites do. That's another reason. And then thirdly, a lot of white wealth is based off of inheritance. Majority of Black people do not receive an inheritance. Okay? So whether that inheritance come from grandma, granddad leaving the money, or whether that inheritance come via a life insurance policy, however that inheritance reaches them, they have access as it relates to those funds being part of their financial portfolio that Black people don't. Most Black people can't even afford insurance. That is why we do not see inherited wealth flowing down to the children when a Black passes on or transition.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, because they are working paycheck to paycheck. So the lower level as it relates to the wealth gap in the Black community has always been a disparity, and we can no doubt trace it back to slavery. I mean, and it doesn't matter how we cut it, how we look at it. We've got to go back. This thing has become generational because we labored for free. We were never given the opportunity to really create wealth in this country. And still to this day, the wealth and what you can create is very limited. Okay? Who is that on with us?
Is that Larry again?
No, that's
who's that?
Really?
That's Larry.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. I said Willie Price or somebody. But so that's one stat, my brothers and sisters. All right.
Willie Prince. Oh, that's
okay. Now, listen at this. In 2020, this is after the pandemic, brothers and sisters. The Pew Research Center says that 73% of Blacks did not have an emergency fund to cover 3 months of expenses, compared to 47% of whites. Let me say that again. In 2020, this is when the pandemic gets to rolling, and after the pandemic has started, 73% of Blacks did not have enough emergency funds to cover 3 months of living expenses, meaning that they could not pay their rent or mortgage, they could not pay light bill, water bill, trash bills, basic necessities for living they could not actually afford to pay. They did not have enough in savings. They did not have 3 months of savings put away to pay for just basic living necessities, compared to 47% of whites, okay? 48% of blacks said the pandemic made it harder to pay monthly bills compared to 26% of whites. So once the pandemic started, 48% of blacks, which if we're going by the Pew Research Center, is almost half of the African American population, which is only 13% of the United States, half of those people said that it was much more difficult to pay for monthly bills and expenses after the pandemic started, as opposed to 26% of whites said that it was much more difficult, okay? Also, during the pandemic, Black people also sustained greater job losses than any other racial or any other ethnic group in America. Let me say that again. During the pandemic, Black people sustained greater job losses than any other ethnic group in America, okay? While unemployment rates increased rapidly in April 2020 for Black, white, and Asian workers, a higher rate of unemployment persisted for Blacks a year later. So this is a year after the pandemic started. Employment rates went up in 2020, but in 2021, they leveled off for the Asian and the white unemployed workers. That leveled off. But for Blacks, it continued to rise. It did not level off. So the unemployment rate for Blacks, even though it leveled off for other groups, it continued to rise for Blacks. Thus, we still, here again, what we're talking about, thus we have the widening of the wealth gap. So the pandemic basically created a bubble that burst. For those that did not have sufficient amount of wealth, did not have sufficient amount of savings, that did not have a job that was secure as it relates to a profession, that bubble burst for them, okay? Leaving them in a situation to where they had to find alternative means to now sustain themselves. So we're not talking about wealth creation here. We're talking about sustainability now, okay? We're talking about replenishing finances that were lost due to not being prepared for something that was cataclysmic like the pandemic. Okay. Okay? Mm-hmm. So most Blacks did not have, when you look at as far as finances, okay, most finance, when you talk about financial consultants, most financial consultants want you to have 6 months to a year worth of living expenses in your savings account. Most Blacks didn't have 3 months as it relates to their living expenses in their savings account. So when that bubble burst, they burned through those resources in probably 30 days or less, just trying to sustain themselves, okay? So like I said, so what the pandemic did when that bubble burst, it created a larger gap. Most whites that had that money, they sustained until they got another job if they lost their job. Yes. Okay. Or they sustained until the pandemic started to subside. Boosters came out. Those that took the boosters got the boosters, and they could go back to work, or either they went on to another job. So during the hiring boom a year later, they were able to recoup, okay? Even if they lost a lot, they were still able to rebuild faster.
Gotcha.
Because they had more in their savings. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. Let me go on and give these stats, and then we'll be done. So it says that if we're going to close the wealth gap for the Black population, there are a few things that we have to look at, and we have to start drawing attention to again concerning closing the wealth gap. Let me just give you this stat. Also, prior to the pandemic, 42% of Black people own their homes compared to 73% of white people. Okay. After the pandemic, that fell, okay, to 25% of Blacks being homeowners, as compared to 60% of whites. So during the pandemic, over 26% of Blacks lost their homes. Okay. Not only that, Black business owners prior to the pandemic was 3%. After the pandemic, less than 1% of Blacks own businesses now. There again, further creating the wealth gap. So how do we correct that? Home ownership is tied to wealth, brothers and sisters. Okay? There are a lot of vehicles that you have that you can use financially when you own your own home. You most hear about an equity line of credit. Okay? That equity line of credit is there to homeowners. Okay? A home is a liquid asset. Okay? Meaning that it equals what, or it is accepted as cash. Okay? So you can sell your home, and the value of your home, you will be paid for that value.
Yes.
Okay? So we have to look at, that's one thing that we have to look at. Now, Blacks were very innovative and creative during the pandemic. We talked about that. We talked about all of the internet businesses, the social media businesses that sprang up. Now those things are kind of curtailing, and they're kind of leveling off, okay? So now you kind of, the rubber is meeting the road. Now that market, as far as internet, social media, is so competitive, a lot of Blacks are not making the money that they were making prior to, okay, the pandemic ending. Okay? So everybody was in a virtual world, quote unquote, during the pandemic. Okay, now that is, like I said, is leveling off, and the competition is so great, and now that everybody is getting involved in social media and trying to get paid from their innovation and their creation,
yes.
Okay, the market has become overrun. And whenever the market becomes overrun, people are pushed out.
Yes.
Okay, so those that are not really good at it, they're going to get pushed out. Those that are really perfected their craft and work at it,
yes,
they are the ones that will
sustain.
make some money,
yes,
off of it. Okay, so we have to close the wealth gap by starting businesses again. Okay, even if it's ground level business, I think grassroots businesses are the best businesses. Service industry businesses are the best businesses. Okay, if you look at our Hispanic brothers and sisters, they are service oriented.
Yes.
Okay,
and doing very well with it.
They will cut the yard, they will paint the house, they will clean the house. And I know that in our minds that there's a stigma attached to that. Okay, yes. But even if you don't do it per se yourself. You start the business and hire somebody to do it. And let me share something with you. You don't have to hire somebody that, quote unquote, looks exactly like you. You want to generate the income so that you can plant back into your community. Okay. Even if you have to hire someone that may not look exactly like you. Okay. That's going to be relative, and that is going to be up to the business owner. That's going to be on a case per case basis, so to speak. Okay. But I'm just throwing out to you some ways to be innovative and to start a business. Get back into the service industry. The service industry right now is in desperate need.
Yes.
Okay. Because we saw people fall off from the service industry. Most of your Hispanics, that is the sector in the labor market that they are filling. It's your service industry. Okay. All right. So that is one. And always technology. We need to get our brothers and sisters, those that are IT savvy. Okay. Those that have degrees in computer science. We need to start generating and creating business in technology again, and start teaching our young people about jobs that are in technology. Cybersecurity right now
is booming.
Is off the charts.
Yes.
Okay. So if you have a degree in cybersecurity, all of these things we want to start participating in. Why? Because we want to decrease that wealth gap. Okay. So we have to begin to reinvest in ourselves again. And how we do that is we have to create jobs to where we can help our people. Okay. That's the only way that we're going to get this done as a community. And as the dollar continues to decline, we have to become the value ourselves. Okay. We're going to do another show, and I want to do another show strictly on investments. And I want to talk to you all also about another way to create wealth is investments. I say this: if you're not making money when you're asleep, you're not making money. Okay? If you are not making money when you are asleep, you are not making money. You are simply working to survive. So we want to get you past the place to where you're working to survive, to where your money makes money when you are doing nothing. When you don't have to labor for it, that's when you are truly building wealth. Now, let me give you a perfect example. The slave master did none of the work, but he reaped the benefits of the worker. That's what you want your money to do for you. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So another way to do that is by looking at your 401k. I'm going to stress this, and then we're going to get off. If you are employed and your employer has a 401k match program, whether it's 25%, 35%, 50%, based on tenure, if you are invested in a 401k, please do this for me. Reach out to the investment firm that is handling the 401k for your employer and look over your retirement portfolio. Okay. One, what do you want to do when you get them on the phone? You want to ask them, what are my high rate of return options, stock options, that if you are putting my money in, because they're gambling with your money.
That's right.
Okay.
That's it.
What are my mid-rate investments options that you are putting my money in, and what are my low rate of return options that you are putting my money in? And that's simple enough. And I just want to keep it simple so you understand. High return rate options, mid return rate options, and low return rate options. Now, when you get them on the phone and they are discussing that with you, I want you to educate yourself so you'll be able to talk fluently to them about the different investment options that you may have as it relates to your 401k. You're always going to have an employee stock option. That is normally a mid rate of return option or a low rate of return option. It is also called a mid-risk or low-risk return option. A high-risk option is going to be more volatile on the market, but it is going to have your highest monetary value of return. Now, if you are keeping up with your portfolio, every month you should be looking at your investment returns, what your dollar is making for you. I'm not concerned about what the match is from the employer. I just want you to get used to seeing, this is what my money, this is how much I invested this month, this is how much I made from that investment, from that 6 or 5 or 4% that I'm putting into my 401k. And this is what option bought me the most money. Then call them back, have another discussion with them, and then if you have to shift it every quarter, start moving your portfolio around, okay? Because you can have an outstanding quarter and you can add to your 401k $40,000 just by having them to shift some things for a quarter, okay? So all of those things I want to teach you. Janice has been with me on several calls I've gone on in helping people with investments. I do go out. It's rare now, but for special people, I'll come out and we sit down and I look at your 401k or whatever your investment portfolio is. Okay, so let me just say this and we'll end. I said that 15 minutes ago, but I'll say that I love finances, okay? Anybody that knows me,
yes, he does.
I'm a finance guru. This is what I did in school, so I love it. But anyway, if you have invested in digital currency, i.e. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, whatever it may be, listen, do not move your money, okay? Yes, it's up and down market right now. It's very volatile as well, but that market is turning, okay? The more that the United States look at the digital banking system, which they are looking at, you're going to see digital currency begin to climb again, and it's going to consistently climb. It's not going to be as volatile, okay? So don't just sell right now, all right? Let the money stay, okay? And watch the market. We're already at that place, quote unquote, in the U.S. economy to where everything is being digitized because the dollar is going to go away. And if I had to predict it, I would say within the next 5 years, the dollar is not going to have much, if at all, any value to it. Everything is going to be digitized. If it keeps going the way it's going, you're going to see the yuan as the world reserve currency, which means that that's going to be the tradable currency on the market, which means that you will be trading probably in a digital format of the yuan. Okay, so now that's Brian's prediction. That's not saying that it's going to happen, but if I had to say, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the changing of the guard when it comes to the world currency and the dollar actually being at its last phase of glory, so to speak. Okay, so I'll end there. But thank you, brothers and sisters.
Oh, I enjoy it, you guys. I am learning every day. I learn something financially with Brian and historically as well. And I hope you've enjoyed this show, and we've enjoyed having you on here. And for those that were not able to watch it, please go back and watch it. We're also on YouTube. Brian and Jan. Men and women of destiny.
Men and women of destiny.
Men and women of destiny on YouTube, and we are on Facebook on my platform. So please go back and share this video with as many people as you can, because we do need to be educated in this form. Thank you again for joining, and we appreciate you guys so very much. We will see you on Sunday.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Thank you.